Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Man, Aggie, Air Force vet, good friend, calling in from way down in beautiful, this time of year, beautiful. And I emphasize that as I look outside at the snow, probably green, College Station, Texas. Chris, man, great to have you here, brother. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Man, and I just got to say, because I don't think I've said this yet, Camden, you'll have to fact check this later on. I'll just say gig 'em, because I don't think I've said that once on all the podcasts where we're 140 plus.
I think you're right. I don't think you've said it. We've probably said bear down more than gig 'em, which is
I
wild.
think we have. So there's our first gig 'em for the show. Mark that one in the record books. It's going down in the history of the Cam and Otis Show that we got. We got Chris Hunter here, and he had Otis, helped me, guided me, influenced me to say gig 'em. So Chris, man, the first thing that popped in my mind, not the Aggie-ness, but the cool airplane you worked on when you were in the Air Force. I mean,
yep.
Probably still can't talk a whole lot about it, but how cool was that to be like the dude fixing the leading edge airplane in the world?
It was actually a really cool honor. I was sitting in our training and as an F-16 crew chief going through training, and we had, someone come into our classroom, said, raise your hand if you want to work on the stealth. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. 100% of us, not a big class, is like 10 people, every single one of us, heck yeah, let's do it. Right. And, so the F-117 is a jet that I worked on in the military, and I went in as, someone who had never worked on a whole heck of a lot of things other than my car. Right. And they taught us how to work on, man, you name it, as far as the jet goes, we, as a crew chief on the F-16 and the F-117, you pretty much know how to dismantle that entire jet, and the only things we didn't really work on were like avionics, that's the electronics type of stuff. But other than that, it was pretty cool. It was awesome. The very first time that we taxied the F-117 in, that was one of our, first kind of things. And, we all celebrated afterwards because that was just the coolest thing in the world to be able to taxi in an F-117 coming into the hangar, which all F-117s back then had hangars, right? And they still do if they're out there. Which I've heard things, little rumblings saying that they've been spotted over Tonopah in New Mexico. So that's where they originated from. Whether they've been turned into drones at this point, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've got lots of buddies that are like, yeah, I've been hearing little rumblings that people have been spotting these things out there near Vegas. So.
It's just it's an awkward looking airplane. I mean, I grew up in the shadow of Carswell Air Force Base, and my dad was F-16, and I think he the F-35. I don't remember if he worked on the 117 or not. I can't remember now, but I just remember how beautiful those other airplanes were, and then seeing the 117, it's like, damn, that thing's ugly. Yeah. Does it work?
Right. Well, and it's really not supposed to aerodynamically. It's not supposed to fly, and without the use of computers, it really wouldn't. So it's not like the F-16 in the fact that, of course I never got to fly it. I was a crew chief. I was the guy working, making sure that it could fly. Right. But, from everything that we were taught is that jet was never supposed to really aerodynamically fly. So.
Yeah, there you go. Science.
There you go. Right.
Yeah. I mean, because I remember those days and being fascinated by that. So then what? I'm just going to change complete right-hand turn on this one. What the heck is it about marketing that excites you, man? Because you've been doing marketing basically since you stopped turning the wrench on the airplane.
Yep.
Then you just took a left-hand turn and said, marketing.
Yeah.
You've been doing that for a while. What is it, man? What is it about? What does it excite you?
So what excites me about marketing in general, right, is that I get to help people increase their business, right? And that's really, I've figured out in the past 20 years of doing it, that's what really excites me is that I get to go out and help people grow their businesses, right? This is their baby. And so, it's now, how did I go from that, from turning wrenches, on the F117 out in the desert to doing that? I actually, it started because I was going to school the entire time I was in the Air Force, right? And I was taking computer science classes. I was taking pretty much and soaking up everything that I possibly could as far as programming languages went. I went from basic to C to C plus, to Visual C, to all of these different things, as well as database programming and stuff like that. And I started figuring out that I really liked building websites, right? So while I was in the Air Force, while I was also going to school, I started freelancing and building websites for, and really trying to freelance during that time with small businesses. Well, we're talking 1998, 1999. And it was a really hard sell at that point because the .com bubble had just burst. And, most of these folks were like, and especially out small business out in New Mexico, right? They're like, yeah, that's a fad. We don't need that. We've got the yellow pages, right?
Yeah, the internet's a fad. It ain't going nowhere.
Right, exactly. And so, I started building out websites for nonprofit groups on the base, and got a call. I worked night shift, right? And got a call, and my commander came up and he's like, hey, and our commander at that time was a lieutenant, and came up and said, hey, General wants to see you. Go change your uniform, go up to his office. Wait, what? I was a 3-striper, right? And I'm like, what? Who wants to see me? That's a major jump in the chain, right? Typically it's, you were going to see the squadron commander first. And, so I was honestly what the first thing that goes through an airman's mind is, holy crap, what did I do?
Yeah, what did I do wrong? Exactly.
What did I do wrong? Right. So I'm just racking my brain, and my commander was like, I don't know what you did, but get up there as fast as you can, stop by your dorm room. I just come off shift, so I'm dirty, and nasty, and boots are horrible. And luckily I had a spare set of boots, spare uniform in my dorm room, went there and grabbed it and got up to his office. And I'm sitting in his office, just racking my brain, right? And he made me sit there probably about 30 minutes or so out in, the reception area. And eventually I go into his office, they have me go in, I'm standing at attention. And literally he turns around, he's doing this power move, where he turns around, and I'm like, oh man, what, and I'm sweating. I'm like, I just cannot figure out what I did wrong, because I might get this wrong. I think that he was a 2-star general, right? So, I had never talked with anyone in that level of authority at that point, right? Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, son, I've been hearing a lot of things about you on the base. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, I've seen some of the websites that you did, and I'm really impressed, and I don't, be honest with you, I don't have anyone on my staff, on the communications, staff, that can do anything like what you've been doing. And I'm like, okay, great. All right. Thinking, geez. All right. It's talking about that. I didn't do something wrong, right?
I hope that crash a jet somewhere. I talked to the other night at the bar, right?
And so he goes, how'd you like to come off the flight line and build me a website for our base? Holloman Air Force Base, that was pretty big deal for me, right? And I'm like, yes, sir, absolutely. I'd love that, sir. I'd love to do that. And he goes, well, how long do you think it's going to take? I said, sir, anywhere in between 30 days to 90 days. Honestly, I don't know exactly. How about you like to come off that flight line and come into some air conditioning for 90 days? You good with that? Yes, sir. Absolutely. I'd love to do that. So driving out from there, that's when I kind of figured out, this is what I want to do with my life, right? Mm-hmm. This is, what I could build my life around this right here, that moment right there. And really, when I look back, that's exactly the origin story for me personally, becoming a web designer and then eventually turning into marketing, because guess what? Website is your mouthpiece. It's the very beginning. It's your foundation of, what all of your marketing stands on, right? It's how you tell people about your thoughts and what you stand for as a small business owner. It tells people about your business, about your services, about your current clients. It tells your story. So most of the people that I worked with initially thought that it was just a static brochure. And honestly, I still have clients that think it's a static brochure. And I've tried to change that mindset that your website is the foundation of everything that we do of your marketing. Right. And so anyways, fast forward a little bit, we started learning about SEO. I'd been doing it for my own websites for a long time and eventually got talked into doing that for clients. And so I had to systemize it because it was back then, it was a loose set of things that I did to get us sites ranked, so we started building processes around that and started, building our SOPs, our standard operating procedures around that and really systemizing how we rank websites. Fast forward to about 2014 and me and my business partner built some software that helps us massively scale on the SEO side of things, right? So when I say that, typical SEO companies, when you go into work with them, they're going to give you, 10 or 20 keywords, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were before me and my business partner talked. And so we built some software that helps us scale that piece out. So now we can offer clients thousands of keywords that we can help them get ranked on, and it's that software also automates a whole bunch of other tasks that we do. So I don't have to have as many employees in-house, and helps us scale as a marketing company, because honestly, marketing services are not very scalable. It's very, very hard to scale a company. And that has been on the forefront of our minds, since 2014 really is just, okay, so we've gotten to this point. How do we scale higher? How do we get this into something that we can really help even more clients out with, So anyways, that's my story, It's not anything, unusual, just sitting in a general's office shaking, going, what in the world did I do?
Do you approach the marketing and the web design aspects in a similar way as you would approach working on the planes? That kind of mechanic tinkering type approach of, because when I pictured my little bit of experience working on websites, it's very much that, like, you're staring at it, move this little thing, move this around. Is that your kind of approach?
Kind of. So when I first started it, that was kind of it, and you have to consider that I started building websites truly in 1998, right? And it has evolved, that as an industry has evolved greatly since then. We've gone so much as building our own content management system to now we build everything off of WordPress websites. How do I approach it now? How I approach it now is way different than how I did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I think that it was probably, let's tinker a little bit here, let's do this. Now we've got a set framework that we use with the messaging, right? That helps convert a lot better than what most businesses do right now. Okay. So we use a framework called Storybrand by Donald Miller, and the Storybrand framework
friend of the show. Actually, Dr. Peterson's a friend of the show. We've had him on before too. Great guy.
Nice. Yeah. And Storybrand is a great framework to start with. If you are out there, wondering how to build your website or how your website could be doing a better job, start with Storybrand, right? And what Storybrand is just simply a framework, right, that helps you tell your story and positions you as the guide in the story and not the hero, right? The hero of the story, of everyone's story, is your customers or your clients, right? And you should be talking to their problems and how you help solve those problems, and giving them the framework for them to do that. So, most small businesses, I mean, I look at thousands of websites every single year, and I can say without hesitation that most of them are built wrong. Welcome to my small business. That's what you see when you go to, most websites, right? And it should, you literally have 3 seconds when someone comes to your website to when someone will bounce. If you can't tell them within those 3 seconds what you do, how you help solve their problems, and how they can get it. If they can't figure that out within 3 seconds, they're going to leave your website. So we help our clients. That's the starting point of all of our marketing, because that is the base of everything that we do, right? If your website doesn't convert, if you do SEO, if you do pay-per-click ads, if you do Facebook ads, none of that is going to matter if your website can't convert, right? If it's not talking to the problems of your clients and customers. So it's just that easy.
So that's a really interesting thing. And I'm kind of thinking there had to have been a lot of trial and error on this. I always, when you think about you're an expert, but how'd you become an expert? I guess is really what I'm kind of getting at, because, there was probably a couple of times where you stumbled over the curb, or you called somebody, or did whatever. So that's really what I want to know about, is how'd you become the expert? Really?
Constant and education, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marketing has, for the past 20 years, accelerated at such a fast pace. And there's so many different things that you can do that, as a marketing agency owner, I have to stay on the forefront of, and the tip of the sword, really, coming back to the military speak here, right? We have to stay on the very forefront. And so that's one of our core values, right, for our company, is constant education, because marketing moves at such a fast pace. Facebook ads, for instance, just as a small, for instance, changes. I mean, if from week to week, you look at the interface this week, it's going to look different next week, and if you're not staying on top of what are the trends, what's working, what's not working, then you're just going to get left behind in the dust, and that goes for, even if you're not a marketing agency owner, if you're, let's say, a small business owner, if you're not staying on the forefront of that kind of stuff, right, you're going to find yourself in 10 years still doing something, right, that doesn't work. And a great, for example of that, are the people that are still advertising in Yellow Pages, right? Yellow Pages don't work. They flat out do not work. And if you're still doing that, you got a major problem. You're just wasting your money and throwing it completely out the window, So to answer your question, see all these books behind me, right? These just constant education. I've got a book sitting right here on my desk called Systemology that I'm finishing up reading. It's just constant education.
What was it like working through all of that technological growth? Because I'll be honest, guys, I had an age moment when you said you were working on this in '98, and I thought, I don't even know what the hell it looked like back then. Like, I don't have a concept of the internet before 2005. I guess I'm that young. But what was it like working through all of that technological change? I mean, you already talked on the education side to keep up with it, but what was it like?
Oh man, well, back then, '98. I mean, we're talking we're still in the dial-up age, and AOL was top. I mean, back then, '98, Google didn't even exist, right? They didn't exist until '99, 2000, I think, somewhere around in that time frame. And so the first website that I ranked was on Yahoo, and it was my personal website, right? That I was trying to kind of tinker around, going back to the tinkering, right? How do I figure this out? How do I get, because I saw Yahoo, which was the top dog back then, right, as the leading industry. And so if directory, and that's what it was, right? It wasn't a search engine, it was a directory. And so if you weren't there, right, how are people going to find you? And so, it looked way different. It looked absolutely just 180 degrees different than what it looks like today. Facebook didn't exist. Google itself didn't exist. Twitter didn't exist. YouTube didn't exist. So none of those things were, those weren't even thoughts at that point. I mean, Google was, right. But no one knew about it, right. In 98. So as the years have progressed, it's the approach to digital marketing, right, which is my base. That's what I do, and has completely shifted, right? It's shifted from, okay, most people don't even have a website. Most small businesses don't even have a website, to now it's a standard. If you don't have a website, what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
Are you
I
even
ain't
in
doing
business?
with you because I don't trust
Right.
you. You don't have a website. Yeah.
Right. If you haven't updated your website in a decade, right, which I come across those all the time, and it's easy to find those are websites that are not mobile responsive. They are not mobile friendly, right? If you haven't updated your website in a decade, it's time to get on it, right? And because guess what is the most important thing, right, that has happened to digital marketing? Sorry, you're showing my iPhone right here, just in case
Hey,
you're
for
listening
folks
to
out
this.
in radio land,
Yeah.
that thing that he just held up is called a phone,
Yeah.
smartphone, iPhone. So I just got to play like I'm a radio DJ once in a while. I have fun doing it.
But that's completely changed the landscape of everything, because now you've gone from having to dial up, right, to having to get on a physical computer that most likely is slow as all get out, to 10 years later after that, 2008 timeframe, most people are getting iPhones at that point, right? And so it's shifted from having to design everything for your website to now designing for mobile phones, and shift to today, 2022. I mean, it has completely changed even in the past 5 years, right? On how you design websites, how you market. Most businesses market to either Google ads or Facebook ads right now, right? And are shifting into things like TikTok, which I don't mess with any of that, but YouTube is becoming more and more, because guess what? YouTube is now on people's TVs, and so if that's going to become what the future is moving towards, I think, as well as Hulu, right, is another. They've got their own, platform that you can do self service ads, with. So, I mean, it's, to answer your question, it is completely changed. And again, it's that constant evolution, that constant learning, that constant, okay, what's working for not only my industry, but what's working for other industries as well.
What was one of the, and you kind of already answered this, but what were some of the biggest technological interruptions that happened? Because I can picture that as much as it is incremental growth, over the course of those years, there's got to be times where it's like, well, summer of 2006, everything changed type thing. So talk through a couple of those if you would.
Well, for agencies in general, one of the biggest shifts that I had was in 2008, right? 2008, we had the recession that happened during that time frame, right? And back then, my web design company, and that's what we were a web design company that did some marketing. Guess what? Projects dried up because businesses stopped spending, right? And I had about 20 people on staff, roughly somewhere around there, 10 to 20 people on staff that were designers and developers and stuff like that. And we had a lot of projects in the queue that just completely went away, overnight. And we had a, oh crap moment. And we're like, well, how do we shift this? Right. And that's when we started really offering more SEO, more marketing type activities and by the way, we'll do a website, right? So that was a complete shift for my agency. Now, as far as technologies, again, it's the iPhone has been the biggest change in the entire industry. And when I say the iPhone, there's other phones out there too that are smartphones now, but the iPhone was the first, right? Well, BlackBerry was there, but they just couldn't get their stuff. It didn't look it was a pain to try to figure that out for
Yeah, the BlackBerry is good
BlackBerry.
for sending messages. That was
You know, but the iPhone shifted the entire digital marketing industry. The other thing that has been the biggest shift as well has been Facebook itself, just simply Facebook, as well as I guess Google, Google and YouTube, those things, the number one search engine in the world right now. And they've been the top dog in the entire world for the past decade, at least, right, is Google. And the number two right now is YouTube. People use YouTube to search for things, right? And yes, it's you can go and get videos, but guess what? If you got to figure out how to fix your car and you don't know how to do that, guess where I'm going? I'm going to YouTube first, right? If I need to figure out how to, I talked with someone this weekend. He sewed his own sleeping bag. He made his own sleeping bag, right? Because he's 6'7", and none of the sleeping bags on the market fit him. So he's like, I'm just going to make my own. And I asked him how he did it. And he said, I went to YouTube. I figured out how to sew from YouTube. I figured out how to make my own sleeping bag. And it looked like an REI sleeping bag, but taller, right? I mean, so it could fit his frame. And he was like, it's perfect. So there's been a lot of shifts, email marketing still works, as we found with COVID. Everyone's been saying for the past decade that email is dead, email is dead, email is dead. Guess what? If you went into lockdown without a customer database, your business suffered, right? However, if you had that database and you could let people know, about the upcoming things within your business, you're probably safe, right? So if you're not building your database now, still, if you don't believe in that, then you need to, right? That should be the very first thing that you are building is your customer database. That way you can stay in contact with them via email.
What pops into my mind, I'm curious about is things like billboards and stuff like that. Are those things, will they ever go away? Are they always going to be with us or what?
I think lawyers are always, especially personal injury lawyers, are always going to use those things because they like seeing themselves. Okay.
Good point.
They like driving down the highway and say, that's mine. I'm there. Does it work? I don't know. I think that billboards are good for destination type venues, places, like up in Amarillo, the big techs, right? I mean, I grew up, anytime we drove up there, you would see billboards, every mile to 2 miles, right? You're almost there. You're almost there. You're almost there. And so it builds up that anticipation. I think stuff like that is pretty good, but for Joe the plumber, no. I mean, that's just not, that's not how you should be advertising. You should be advertising using your ad budget either on Google Ads or paying someone like me to get you ranked in the right spot at the right time that people are searching for your services. So yeah, there's a lot of things that don't work. I literally tested out, mentioned it earlier, Yellow Pages. I had a client up in New Jersey that was just adamant, that his Yellow Pages ads work because, older people, used Yellow Pages, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. I said, okay, cool. Let's put our money where our mouth is. I'm going to bet you $100, right? That they do not give you any kind of ROI. So we put a tracking number, right? We gave it to the Yellow Pages. We put a tracking number, which if you're listening to this, you don't know what a tracking number is. It's just a simple number that sits in between people calling you and where your actual phone line is. They don't know the difference. So we put a tracking number on his Yellow Page ads. And I told him when the sales rep comes back the next year, give me a call and I'll tell you, I'll look up in our records, right? Because it tracks all of that stuff and puts it into a database. I'll look up and I'll let you know how many phone calls that you got. So here's the question. How many do y'all think that he got?
0 is what I'm going to say.
I was going to go with 1.
No, big goose
Damn.
egg. He got 0 phone calls. And guess what? He was spending $60,000 a year on those Yellow Pages ads.
Oh my
Complete waste of money. Complete waste of money. So.
Well, on that same thing, because it's actually a question I just written down, and we're kind of going over to it. That's an interesting area that, in the Yellow Pages with that budget, that's a more specific one. But what I've read a decent amount into, and it just fascinates me, is the huge corporations with their advertising budgets. Yeah. And it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy of, it's like, well, if we spend $10 million, well, look at all of our sales last year. So we have to keep spending $10 million on advertising. But then it's really hard to actually tease out what's happening there. Yeah. So not much of a question, but I just wanted to throw that over to you to get a little bit on that.
So what I've found is that bigger companies, right? Bigger, we're talking Fortune 500 companies, they spend a lot of money, right? They waste a lot of money, right? Because they're not small and nimble, right? They can't adjust their marketing strategies very quickly and easily like a small business can. And their tracking is horrible, right? So when it comes down to how many, I don't know, on a Fortune 500 company, let's talk that they sell bumpers. I don't know, right? How many bumpers did we sell because of SEO? I don't know. How many bumpers did we sell because of, your ads that you spent at a specific convention, let's say, right, at SEMA? Who knows? It's the bigger that you are, right? You're more like the Titanic, I think, and it's really hard to shift, right, as you can with small businesses. And that's why I work with small businesses mainly, is that, if we find something that doesn't work, we're going to shift to something else really quickly, right? If Facebook ads doesn't work for your company, let's try out Google ads, right? If Google ads doesn't work for your company, let's try out, something else, right? And it's just that small tweaks, those small testing, going back to your question about, how much tinkering do we do? That's what we do. That's all we do, right? We're tinkering and testing. And in fact, the thing that I tell my employees as well as my clients is test, don't guess, right? So if you think that something's going to work, kind of like the Yellow Pages ads, right? Test that out. Let's see what's the actual true result coming from that. And stop guessing. Stop saying, yeah, I think this works. I think that works. It might or might not. Who knows? I don't know that, right? But we're going to test it out. So
I'm trying to think what the company was, but I remember reading, on that same subject, a story of an economist going in to consult with a huge company like McDonald's or somebody, and he basically did the same thing as your Yellow Pages bet, and went through and ran the numbers and was like, so you could probably drop your budget by like $5 million, and you would still have, like, statistically speaking, you would still have the same sales. And they went, I don't know, that smells like BS, and kicked him out, and paid his check and everything, but just like, that doesn't seem right, and just kept doing it. It's like crazy thing there. And again, it's why small businesses are so much more effective in that, because of the flexibility aspect.
Absolutely. We're the sports cars of the world. We can shift on a dime, right?
Yeah. So staying in that small business thought process, what would be that number one? Hey guys, if you're at that spot, you can't hire the marketing heroes team. Do this one thing now, and then track it, and then grow your business, and then call us. What's that? Yeah. What's that thing?
So, and I get folks that, can't really afford our services all the time. And so I get that question a lot. What I would focus on if I were a service-based company, let's say that you're a remodeler, let's say, right? I would focus on Google My Business. I would double down on my efforts on Google My Business right now, today. And that's simply because, and it's not Google My Business anymore. They just changed it about a month ago to Google Business Profile, right? Whatever. But it's the 3-pack is what they call it, with the maps area, right? So basically ensure that you've got your listing optimized for the main keyword, right? The main couple of keywords that people would search for your services for. Okay. So going back to that remodeler, Let's say that you want to get ranked for remodeler in College Station. Just simply having the category placed correctly in your listing, right, is the number one driver of that. Number two, start getting reviews. Ask your current client base for reviews, because reviews are driving those rankings as well, right? The more often that you get reviews and the better that your reviews are, the more that Google will place you up in the search engine there. Okay. And then third on that, as far as Google My Business goes, go to someplace like Yext or, so, we use a place called Moz Local that will align all of your citations. So a citation is simply name, address, phone number. Make sure that they are all aligned in all of the main directories throughout the internet. And these two places, Yext and Moz Local, have that as an aggregation point. So you basically have to put it in once, and then it'll make sure that your citations are aligned, basically, right? That's what I would double down on Google My Business. I would do those three things as far as it goes to specifically to Google My Business, and ensure that you're posting pictures, right, to Google My Business, or now Google Business Profile, because they allow you to do that kind of stuff. And again, more activity inside of that account. Google really, really likes that kind of stuff. They want you using their properties, and they're going to reward you if you're doing it and your competitors are not.
Oh, that's great advice. I appreciate you doing this. So now I'm gonna flip it the other direction. And what's the future trend? What do you see coming in, a year, 5 years sort of thing? What?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're working on right now, really perfecting, we've been working on it for the past year, but really perfecting for all of our clients, is text message marketing, right? Text messages, SMS messages get a higher conversion rate, a higher open rate, really, right? 8 times as much as an email does, right? So earlier I said be building your email database. I would also be building your mobile phone database. Most people are on their mobiles nowadays. They don't have, hard lines. Most people that I know do not have hard phone lines. They use this $1,000 computer that sits in your pocket all day long, right? And guess what? If you can get into that and get them to open, your conversion rates for your email campaigns, or your text message campaigns, are going to be way better, right? So if you're a small business and you're looking what's in the future, to me, that's it. That's SMS right now for the next 5 years at least, and perfect your automation type campaigns, right? Meaning that when a customer or a client calls you, right? So I work with a lot of roofers, and they're busy, right? They don't always answer their phones, unfortunately. I had one that specifically answered 1 in every 10 phone calls. He literally did this. And I was measuring that, and I called him after a couple of months. I'm like, we're sending you all these leads. Why are you not answering them? Well, I'm up on a roof, or I'm talking with a customer, and, I just don't have time. And I said, well, do you have someone that can pick up those phones, right? That literally could do that. And he said, well, no, because, I just can't do that, whatever. So we built some campaigns and some automations that simply would text back those people, right? That I call it a missed call text back campaign, right? That one thing, right, multiplied his business, because in sales, if you don't get back the lead within 5 to 10 minutes these days, they've moved on to somebody else, right? And so the same thing was happening with him, is that when he called them back at the end of the day or the next day, they're like, sorry, I've already hired a roofer, And so by putting that automation in place, so that anytime he got a phone call, right, it simply said, hey, I'm with a customer right now, or I'm up on a roof right now. When's a good time for me to call you back? Right. It kept them engaged with his brand and let them know that he wasn't out of business, right? Because he wasn't answering his phones. And by doing that, he tripled the amount of sales that he had in the next month. So one simple, tiny little lever can push that whole thing, you know, and it did for him.
I'm going to validate that because I know when I was doing some shopping around for getting some estimates on a remodel here in the house, fella don't call me back. I mean, 24 hours, man, and then you don't hear from them. It's like, and it just shocks me the number of businesses, particularly in the construction industry, that they do just what you said. Yeah, I was up on the roof, didn't have time. It's like, well, then guess what? You're not getting the business. So that's an awesome little program that y'all set up for them. And man, I can see that.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's just such a small thing, you know, and it's a small thing to do that makes that big of an impact, you know, because you're right. Most people are like, okay, you're obviously not interested. I'm going to move on to somebody else who is.
Shifting a little bit more forward and a much bigger idea here, because I had to ask on this. So are you buying a bunch of land in the metaverse to put up digital billboards and virtual stuff? You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about that. I've seen folks that are doing that. I read about like Nike buying a virtual shoe that's, you know, it's like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
That's the next book.
I'm not quite sure on that one. Right. Typically, I like to see is something like that. Is that trend actually working? Right. Is it before I jump on a wave like that? You know, I jumped on one of those waves for websites. So we started building out websites you know, I don't know, about 5-6 years ago or so. We started building out websites and ranking those websites and then trying to rent out those websites, right? For a small fee, right? For all sorts of, a couple of different industries, a couple of different verticals. And we could never get traction with that whole idea. And we just kind of spent a whole bunch of time on that. And it's just, it didn't, you know, small businesses, you know, couldn't wrap their heads around that whole idea, you know, of I'm renting out space in a digital format, basically, just like you would in an office building, right? So using that same idea for the metaverse, I got to see way more people in the metaverse before I start going down that, you know, route, I think. And that's how I would view that, honestly, is that, and not saying like what people did back in 1998, that's a fad, right?
That's what made me think of it, honestly.
Right. But I gotta see a business model actually working before I spend any time of, you know, any kind of money and more importantly, time and energy on that kind of stuff, you know? That's my thought on that. I don't know.
It's go ahead, Dad.
I was just say that to me, that's some wazoo stuff. I got a couple of friends of mine that are doing the NFTs and things like that, which is, you know, what they're doing is pretty cool with the, you know, the old challenge coin NFT is what they're doing. But they're also talking about, you know, buying property in the metaverse. And I just like, to what end? I mean, am I virtually going to hang out at my virtual ranch? I mean,
or you sell it to somebody who wants to build the virtual ranch. I don't know. To me, conceptually, I see it. The thing that, and kind of to your point, Chris, it's like the adoption rate is the huge question mark to me. Like conceptually, I'm like, oh yeah, like 50 years, I could totally see this being the new internet, like all that. But like over the next 10 years, like people my age are already like shaking our heads at it. People older than us are definitely shaking their heads at it. Like I don't think the adoption rate is gonna be as fast as people are thinking, comparing it to the internet. But speaking on that, you know, one of my other questions, you know, speaking of like the different mediums for marketing and advertising, I think that we're kind of at a time where with the streaming services you mentioned with Hulu and YouTube on TVs now, that the old school TV medium is kind of, or not kind of, it's fallen off quite a bit. What, you know, without going too far into it, what are your thoughts on it falling off? Is it kind of like billboards where there's still going to be a place for some stuff, or is it going to get replaced entirely? What are your thoughts on the future of that?
So I go back and forth on that, right? Because the smaller amount of businesses that advertise on a platform, the more visible you are, right? If you are advertising on that platform, right? So let's take here in Bryan College Station, we've got KBTX, right? That's a CBS station here. I'm pretty sure that most people, if they tracked it, right, if they actually put like a tracking phone number, right, or made a way to track their sales via an regular ad, right, I bet you that they're still kind of working right now, because people, even though they've shifted away from traditional cable services, right, they've got that antenna up in their attic so they can watch that football game, you know, or watch the Olympics on NBC right now. The only way to watch that is via, an antenna, right? Or you've got to pay for the NBC, streaming services. Okay. Which, by the way, might or might not work in your area because of the agreements that they've got in place with the cable companies, right? So if you're a small business and you're trying to figure out if this is going to work for you or not, test it, right? Test it out for a quarter and only commit to a quarter and see, did that move the needle, right? For your business? Did it actually increase sales? Ask everybody that comes into your business, how did you find out about us? Now, that being said, if it is part of your omnipresent approach, which every small business should have this approach, okay? An omnipresent approach is basically that you're everywhere, right? If you're a local roofing company here to Bryan College Station, right? If people need to be seeing you online, people need to be hearing your radio ads, they need to be seeing you in the newspaper, they need to be seeing you in everywhere that they go, right? If that is part of your overall strategy, then yes, absolutely, you should be doing that, I think, and you should be spending some money, but that shouldn't be the first way that you get in front of people, right? If you're brand new to business, if the first way that I would get in front of people is digitally, not via radio, not via TV, because one, those platforms are expensive, right? They charge, in my opinion, extremely high rates for what you get out of that. But again, test it, see if they'll let you into a contract for 3 months, versus an entire year, and test it out. See, does it work for your company? So again, test, don't guess.
That's great advice. I love that, man. And man, there's been some great practical applications. I really appreciate you sharing that. So in my what did I learn, man, I'm going to go back to the something very early on. You said that the website is the foundation of your company and tells your story, and it has to live. That is so foundational, to repeat of it. But because if you're not doing things in it and not updating it and taking care of it and nurturing it, then it's not going to do anything, right? I don't know how many sites, and I know, goodness gracious, you've probably seen way too many that you just go,
Oh yeah.
But just companies that I'm doing some diligence on, and it's like, golly, come on, guys.
Yep.
It's not that hard. So yeah, I think that was a great thing for me. Camden, what'd you learn?
Well, I finished an analogy that Chris started. I don't know if you had a second half to it, but you said small businesses are the sports cars. I threw on there in my notes that the large corporations must be the trains then, because they can move a hell of a lot more stuff, but they can't turn. And so I don't know if that's where you would take that analogy, but I thought that was a really interesting thing, just as far as like the flexibility and the capabilities of small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
But you, Chris, what'd you learn?
I guess I learned that I really need to start looking into NFTs and metaverse kind of stuff. If y'all are asking about it, it's got to be on the forefront, and the tip of the spear. And if I'm saying that I'm on the tip of the spear and I'm not looking into that stuff, maybe I need to.
Yeah, that would be pretty scary if a guy like me is asking you about something like that. Oh no, you're already behind if I'm asking you.
Right. Yeah, I'm still on the mindset though that if everyone in America had an Oculus, then maybe, right? Or 80% had an Oculus, right? I don't know what that number truly is. I want to say it's pretty low because I just got one for my son for Christmas. So anyways, and it's cool, Don't get me wrong, it's very cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there you go. There's
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see me or anybody like me doing that a whole heck of a lot unless I gotta. I'd much rather be in the real verse here.
yeah.
No, there's my tagline, the
Oh, yeah.
real verse. Hashtag real verse.
The real verse.
Man, Chris, this has been great. Man, how folks get in touch with you, how they learn more about what y'all got going on at Marketing Heroes. And we didn't even mention, I'll throw it out there right now, Aggie Growth Hacks, your podcast, which is awesome. I think I'll be a guest on there here coming up soon. So how can folks get in touch with you, learn more?
You can learn more about me on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Chris Hunter, College Station. You probably find me. You can look up, go to our website at mheroes.com. That's mheroes.com. We've got, all tons of information on our website. I'm constantly giving, stuff like this out as much as I possibly can because, small businesses need help more today than they ever have needed that help. So go on over there. There's tons of blogs, tons of videos. You can look us up on aggiegrowthhacks.com. That is a friend of mine, Greg Martin, and I sat down a couple of years ago and just decided to do this podcast deal, right? And jumped headfirst into it and completely failed. But we also now have the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship as our sponsor, and they help us get in touch with Aggie entrepreneurs who are successful, and we interview them and try to find out their growth hacks. So Otis, you're going to be on ours here pretty soon, and we're going to find out what your growth hacks are.
Yeah, I better figure something out then. So yeah, I got a homework assignment. No, it's been great having you, Chris, man. Appreciate it. Gig 'em. You take care of things down there in Aggie land. I know you will. That's right. Maybe basketball will win we'll turn it around a little bit. I'm always keeping my fingers crossed that we'll figure that game out. Something about the round ball that just confuses us Aggies, I guess. I don't know.
I know. Exactly.
Leave that to the Wildcats.
That's right. The Wildcats finally woke back up again. Yeah, y'all are doing good. So,
all right.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. What?
I was just gonna say, just don't let us play y'all in football because I do not want that. That would be an embarrassment to our whole university.
Well, especially after this recruiting year, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, and we're still paying Kevin Sumlin. I don't know if you guys are still paying him, but we still paying him like $2 million a year or something crazy like that. Oh yeah.
Who knows if we're still paying him or not? And at this point, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anybody cares at this point with Jimbo.
Nope.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So y'all are happy, so you don't have to worry about still paying him. We are not happy, so we are very worried about still paying him.
All right, Camden, why don't you run us out?
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, Chris Hunter, for joining us today, and our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.